Mr. Get Money, Stay True. Kevin Campbell, CEO of Scree Element Magazine, sitting here with Mr. 19 Keys. We're finna sit down and chop it up and actually, figure out what's going on with it. So basically, give us a rundown on where you from, how was it growing up in Oakland?
I grew up in a particular interesting paradigm, as I like to put it, because I grew up seeing black men with power. Black Muslim men with power, to be more specific. I grew up in a setting of an organization that had become known as your Black Muslim Bakery in Oakland. And it was known as sort of like a paramilitary structure. It was ran by a man named Dr. Bay. He had his own EMF health services, he had his own security services, he had his own private schools, had his own bakery. And I seen an organization that allowed black men to be felons off the street, come in there, get cleaned up, whether it was drugs or whatever it may be. They'd clean them up, take them through FY classes, which is Fruit of Islam, which is the military training given to the men in the Nation of Islam. And what they would do is get those same men jobs, get those same men houses, fix them up, clean them up. So, growing up, seeing that was a very powerful thing as a youngster, because I also, I think just from like the early ages of like 10 years old, I would teach other black men that they were gods. And this would be like the first time they hear from somebody of my age, and I didn't really think about how powerful that was growing up until now. So, during that time, and as I just think about it now and reflecting on how important that is and why my perspective is different than a lot of other people, it's not much that impresses me in today's world, because I know what it takes and what can be done, and I know why that particular thing failed as well. I believe any organization has to remove ego in order to be successful in the right manner. So particularly, I grew up also in the streets. I had a household that my parents taught us that we Muslim guys, but we also, I grew up not only in Oakland, but in St. Louis as well. And both of them were like number 1, number 3 of like the most violent cities. So neither one was like a break from the other. It was just transitioning into another environment. So growing up, getting caught up in the streets, having court cases, staying in environments in trap house, selling drugs, robbing, just doing a bunch of different things, getting caught up in that element. But there was a particular focus that I never, forgot as far as who I am. But it was more so just getting caught up in my environment, but never allowing myself to completely be the environment. So when I caught my first case, I didn't really learn from there. I still had an arrogance to believe that, this was just a small little blimp, and I can continue to be able to move how I wanted to. It wasn't until I was 19 years old and I caught a case, and we had to fight it in trial, to where that's when I learned how to value knowledge. Because during that time, my older brother had gave me some books that he told me to read. He was one of my co-defendants, but he was locked up, and I was free at the time because he had other pending cases already attached to his name. And I remember reading these books, and one of them was like Socrates or whatever it was. But the book, like if you know anything about Socrates and that philosophy, a lot of that jargon that they use in the courtroom is built off that language. A lot of that deceptive language and things of that nature. So I started to studying different things about, deceptive language and that whole use of dialogue to understand what was going on around me. I always say every level of consciousness comes with a new language. So I had to learn that language that was happening in order for me to be able to get my freedom. So not only did we did that, but we put together a great defense and a strategy to be able to implement and execute a way for us to be able to win. So I remember the day that they said, Jabril Muhammad, jury, come with the verdict, heart beating, and they say not guilty. During that entire process, and a lot of people didn't know because I'm real stoic, I go through different situations without complaining. During that process, I remember feeling a different kind of anxiety than I ever felt in my life. You know what I mean? Because I didn't know what my foreseeable future was going to be. And when you don't know what your future is, it puts you in this lane of depression, because you can't really set upon a vision for your next moves. Because you have to wait to see what the determination and the outcome of the situation that you're currently in. So it wasn't until I was actually able to utilize knowledge in a manner to where I was telling my lawyer different things that he should do in court in order to get certain things thrown out. And then he'd do it, you know, we actually get it thrown out. And he was like a fat, white, fumbling guy. And I remember he told me after the case, he said, you know, this is like my first case I ever won. I'm like, goddamn. I'm glad I was the first one. But I remember after we beat it, man, it was just this feeling of validation. It was like, damn, I am a God. You know, because that's what really got me through it. Because my parents always told me I was a God. So even in times I remember getting called up for a case and they was interrogating me in the room, they tried to get me to snitch on my older brother. They tried to use that old tactic, I forget what it's called.
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, and I remember just thinking in my head, like, these people crazy. Like, I'm a whole guy. They think that this law and order shit gonna work on me. And I literally chuckled and laughed and they got mad. And, you know, they was like, well, we're gonna take you to the cell. I'm like, we'll take you to the cell, it's cool. And they ended up having to release me on my own recognizance because they didn't actually have any real evidence. But it's sad because a lot of cats get caught up in those situations not having any confidence. You know what I mean? Not knowing anything about the law, not knowing anything about thinking strategically. They get people trapped in there, and I know cats that just tell on themselves. These people had no evidence whatsoever. So I'm super thankful that my parents taught me at an early age self-knowledge and told me who I was, told me who the devil was in the sense of not for me to hate white people, but know how to deal with them, know how to deal with technology, know how to deal with deception. Because I always utilized that when I came across snakes. You know, so in that situation, and the same thing with my court case, I always thought that I'm a God. And my thought process was always, what would God do? You know, and I think of it like in a literal sense, like a smarter version of me can beat this situation. And I know that like 70 to 80% of people, you know, never take their case to trial. You know, never even think about it. They just take whatever plea that's given to them. And that's a sad reality because oftentimes that means that probably like another 50% of them could have beat their case.
Right.
You know?
Do you think it's because they don't want to take time out to study law? That's the only way you're going to win. You got to speak their language.
That's a part of it, but also not knowing the system at all. You know, not knowing the options. You know, and fear as well. You know, and not having, and a lack of resources. Because if you locked up and fighting the case from behind the wall is different than fighting the case from while you're free. Your options are different. But when you locked up, you want the shit to just be over. And you figure, I'm already here, let me just take a deal to get my time, rather if I go fight this and then they go tag on, you know, an extra 5 to 10 years, nah, I'd rather just take this plea deal and get this over with. Not knowing that you actually got this option, but we don't really think about fighting the system. We succumb to it. And then when you get caught up in something, that fear is even rushing even more, so you're not really making the most logical decision.
Right.
So I think it's just, I think for one, it's fear, it's ignorance, it's a lack of knowing the law, and then it's resources. You know what I mean? Because if you grew up in a paradigm where your parents have money, you know what I mean, and they can hire you a lawyer, and you can fight stuff on the outside, your options change. Right. As far as how you're going to continue to maintain your freedom. So we've always had a lack of resources, and that's always been a plight of the poor man. And they've always been able to feed on that. And that's why so many of us is locked up now, is because we never had any justice within the system. You know what I mean? And not even a justice from us fighting the justice system, but before that, even being able to approach this economically. Like, look at the bail system. We know the bail system is just robbing people. It's just vultures on the poor. They know that this person can't afford to bail out, so now they stuck behind the wall. You know, we've seen cases like, what was it, Khalif Browder? You know what I mean? So, I hate to see the reality, and the reason I sometimes talk about my case, because I want people to know, like, yo, you can fight these things. You know what I mean? Like, regardless of what you're going through, I know plenty of people that have fought these things. Like, you have to fight the system. And oftentimes, instead of fighting the system, we surrender. You know, instead of wanting to learn the law, finding the strategy. Like, it's stuff that we was doing within that case that I'm not going to talk about right now as far as how we was able to beat it, but it wasn't no laying down, basically.